It was near the time for the Lord to take Elijah by a whirlwind up into heaven. Elijah and Elisha started to leave Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here, because the Lord told me to go to Bethel." But Elisha said, "I promise, as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two men went down to Bethel. The group of prophets at Bethel came to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take your master away from you today?" Elisha said, "Yes, I know. Don't talk about it." Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here, because the Lord told me to go to Jericho." But Elisha said, "I promise, as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two men went to Jericho. The group of prophets at Jericho came to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that the Lord will take your master away from you today?" Elisha answered, "Yes, I know. Don't talk about it." Elijah said to Elisha, "Please stay here, because the Lord told me to go to the Jordan River." Elisha answered, "I promise, as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two men went on. There were 50 men from the group of prophets who followed them. Elijah and Elisha stopped at the Jordan River. The 50 men stood far away from Elijah and Elisha. Elijah took off his coat, folded it, and hit the water with it. The water separated to the right and to the left. Then Elijah and Elisha crossed the river on dry ground. After they crossed the river, Elijah said to Elisha, "What do you want me to do for you before God takes me away from you?" Elisha said, "I ask you for a double share of your spirit on me." Elijah said, "You have asked a hard thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it will happen. But if you don't see me when I am taken from you, it will not happen." Elijah and Elisha were walking and talking together. Suddenly, some horses and a chariot came and separated Elijah from Elisha. The horses and the chariot were like fire. Then Elijah was carried up into heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw it and shouted, "My father! My father! The chariot of Israel and its horses!" Elisha never saw Elijah again. Elisha grabbed his own clothes and tore them in two to show his sadness. Elijah's coat had fallen to the ground, so Elisha picked it up. He went back and stood at the edge of the Jordan River. He hit the water and said, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" Just as Elisha hit the water separated to the right and to the left. Then Elisha crossed the river. When the group of prophets at Jericho saw Elisha, they said, "Elijah's spirit is now on Elisha." They came to meet Elisha. They bowed very low to the ground before him. They said, "Look, we have 50 good men. Please let them go and look for your master. Maybe the Lord's Spirit has taken Elijah up and dropped him on some mountain or in some valley." But Elisha answered, "No, don't send men to look for Elijah." The group of prophets begged Elisha until he was embarrassed. Then Elisha said, "Send the men to look for Elijah." The group of prophets sent the 50 men to look for Elijah. They looked 3 days, but they could not find him. So the men went to Jericho where Elisha was staying and told him. Elisha said to them, "I told you not to go." The men of the city said to Elisha, "Sir, you can see this city is in a nice place, but the water is bad. That is why the land cannot grow crops." Elisha said, "Bring me a new bowl and put salt in it." They brought the bowl to Elisha. Then he went out to the place where the water began flowing from the ground. Elisha threw the salt into the water and said, "The Lord said, I am making this water pure. From now on, this water will not cause any more death or keep the land from growing crops." The water became pure and is still good today. It happened just as Elisha had said. Elisha went from that city to Bethel. He was walking up the hill to the city, and some boys were coming down out of the city. They began making fun of him. They said, "Go away, you bald-headed man! Go away, you bald-headed man!" Elisha looked back and saw them. He asked the Lord to cause bad things to happen to them. Then 2 bears came out of the forest and attacked the boys. There were 42 boys ripped apart by the bears. Elisha left Bethel and went to Mount Carmel, and from there he went back to Samaria. A man from the group of prophets had a wife. This man died, and his wife cried out to Elisha, "My husband was like a servant to you. Now he is dead. You know he honored the Lord, but he owed money to a man. Now that man is coming to take my 2 boys and make them his slaves." Elisha answered, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" The woman said, "I don't have anything in the house except a jar of olive oil." Then Elisha said, "Go and borrow bowls from all your neighbors. They must be empty. Borrow plenty of bowls. Then go to your house and close the doors. Only you and your sons will be in the house. Then pour the oil into the bowls, fill them, and put them in a separate place." So the woman left Elisha, went to her house, and shut the door. Only she and her sons were in the house. Her sons brought the bowls to her, and she poured oil. She filled many bowls. Finally, she said to her son, "Bring me another bowl." But all the bowls were full. One of the sons said to her, "There aren't any more bowls." Then the oil in the jar was finished. When she told the man of God what had happened, Elisha said to her, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt. You and your sons can live on the money that is left." One day, Elisha went to Shunem, where an important woman lived. She asked Elisha to stop and eat at her house. So every time Elisha went through that place, he stopped there to eat. The woman said to her husband, "Look, I can see that Elisha is a holy man of God. He passed by our house all the time. Please, let's make a little room on the roof for him. Let's put a bed in this room and a table, a chair, and a lampstand. Then when he comes to our house, he can have this room for himself." One day, Elisha came to the woman's house. He went to this room and rested there. Elisha said to his servant Gehazi, "Call this Shunammite woman." The servant called the Shunammite woman, and she stood in front of Elisha. Elisha told his servant, "Now say to her, 'Look, you have done your best to take care of us. What can we do for you? Do you want us to speak to the king for you, or to the captain of the army?" She answered, "I am fine living here among my own people." Elisha said to Gehazi, "What can we do for her?" He answered, "I know. She does not have a son, and her husband is old." Then Elisha said, "Call her." So Gehazi called the woman. She came and stood at his door. Elisha said, "About this time next spring, you will be holding your own baby boy in your arms." The woman said, "No, sir, man of God, don't lie to me." But the woman did become pregnant and gave birth to a son that next spring, just as Elisha had said. The boy grew. One day, the boy went out into the fields to see his father and the men cutting the grain. The boy said to his father, "Oh, my head hurts." The father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." The servant took the boy to his mother. The boy sat on his mother's lap until noon. Then he died. The woman laid the boy on the bed of Elisha, the man of God. Then she shut the door to that room and went outside. She called to her husband and said, "Please, send me one of the servants and a donkey. Then I will go quickly to get the man of God and come back." The woman's husband said, "Why would you want to go to the man of God today? It isn't the new moon or Sabbath day." She said, "Goodbye." Then she put a saddle on the donkey and said to her servant, "Let's go, and hurry. Go slow, only when I tell you." The woman went to Mount Carmel to get the man of God. The man of God saw the Shunammite woman coming from far away and said to his servant Gehazi, "Look, there's the Shunammite woman. Please run now to meet her. Say to her, 'Are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is the child all right?'" She answered, "Everything is all right." But the Shunammite woman went up the hill to the man of God. She bowed down and touched Elisha's feet. Gehazi came near to pull her away. But the man of God said to Gehazi, "Leave her alone. She is very upset, and the Lord didn't tell me about it. He hid this news from me." Then she said, "Sir, I never asked for a son. I told you, don't trick me." Then Elisha said to Gehazi, "Get ready to go. Take my walking stick and go. If you meet anyone along the way, don't even stop to say hello to him. If anyone says hello to you, don't answer. Put my walking stick on the child's face." But the child's mother said, "I promise, as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave without you." So Elisha got up and followed her. Gehazi arrived at the house before Elisha and the Shunammite woman. Gehazi laid the walking stick on the child's face, but the child did not talk or show any sign that he heard anything. Then Gehazi came back to meet Elisha and said, "The child will not wake up." Elisha went into the house, and there was the child, lying dead on his bed. Elisha went into the room and shut the door. He and the child were alone in the room now. Then he prayed to the Lord. Elisha went to the bed and lay on the child. He put his eyes on the child's eyes, his mouth on the child's mouth, and his hands on the child's hands. He lay there on top of the child until the child's body became warm. Then Elisha turned away and walked around the room. He went back and lay on the child until the child sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha called Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite woman." Gehazi called her, and she came to Elisha. Elisha said, "Pick up your son." Then the Shunammite woman went into the room and bowed down at Elisha's feet. Then she picked up her son and went out. Elisha went to Gilgal again. There was a famine in the land. The group of prophets was sitting in front of Elisha. Elisha said to his servant, "Put the large pot on the fire and make some soup for the group of prophets." One man went out into the field to gather herbs. He found a wild vine and picked the fruit from it. He put that fruit in his robe and brought it back. He cut up the wild fruit and put it into the pot. But the group of prophets did not know what kind of fruit it was. Then they poured some of the soup for the men to eat. But when they began to eat the soup, they shouted out, "Man of God, there is poison in the pot!" The food tasted like poison, so they could not eat that food. But Elisha said, "Bring some flour." He threw the flour into the pot. Then he said, "Pour the soup for the people so that they can eat." And there was nothing wrong with the soup. A man from Baal-Shalisha came and brought bread from the first harvest to the man of God. This man brought 20 loaves of barley bread and fresh grain in a sack. Then Elisha said, "Give this food to the people so that they can eat." Elisha's servant said, "What? There are 100 men here. How can I give this food to all these men?" But Elisha said, "Give the food to the people to eat. The Lord says they will eat and there will still be food left over." Then Elisha's servant put the food in front of the group of prophets. The group of prophets had enough to eat, and they even had food left over. This happened just as the Lord had said.